You are watching Access LaPorte County Channel 97. Coming up next is the June 10th meeting for the Michigan City Common Council Workshop. You can find more information on this meeting by visiting www.accesslaportecounty.org.
Okay, we're going to
go
ahead and get started.
Let's go.
I think everybody knows me. I'm Councilman Colter. I represent the first ward. So that's a lot of the beachfront. That's kind of how I got saddled with this problem. So, as you know, tonight we're going to talk about short-term rentals, exploring the solutions. Let me pull up our meeting objective. But also, I'm curious, how many of you were here for the first meeting that we had a month ago? Pretty much the whole room. Okay, awesome. So, the goal of that first meeting was really more of a listening session, just kind of hearing some of the problems from both sides, all three sides, however many sides. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But building off of that, today we're going to talk about building on the 2021 ordinance, which we don't need to reinvent the wheel. That's a phrase I've heard a lot from a lot of different people. So just really leaning into that one. And we're going to build in that ordinance by exploring what the city, the council, and the community can do to move forward. Is that a good objective for everybody? Is that why everybody's here? Anybody in the wrong room? Okay. If you don't have an agenda, they're on the front table. But yeah, getting started at 5. Then in a couple minutes, I'm going to do a presentation, kind of going over some of the notes from that May 13th meeting. And then we'll move into what the city can and cannot do, which largely builds off those notes. And then we've got updates on city enforcement plans, community-based and voluntary solutions. That'll be a big one as we move forward too. Just everybody's got a part of this to work on together. If you don't have an agenda, they're up here at the front. Hey, Sean. So yeah, here's some notes we've got from that last meeting. Some of the challenges that we were looking at, challenges of Airbnbs. For example, there was littering. That's an ongoing issue with some of these Airbnbs. One of the topics that we came up with was the loss of sense of place. When you get new neighbors every weekend, that hurts your neighborhood. It's hard to build a feeling of camaraderie with the people that live around you. One of the things that we talked about was the landlord issue, where sometimes we would like to be where we can call a person and they can show up within 20 minutes and do that. That was something that we brought up as one of the problems. Neighbors bearing the cost. One person pointed out that almost 40% of the homes in the Canada Park neighborhood are now short-term rentals. And then, home values go up, so that's a big issue. Some of the benefits, there's a lot of benefits from short-term rentals. One of the one from today is super cute. I was out for my usual walk-in this morning and ran into a friend from high school who lives in Arizona. But she's super pregnant and visiting her family right now and staying in an Airbnb on Fogarty. So yeah, there is a good side of these. It took me about an hour to realize fully what happens with the least expected person I could have thought. One of the biggest benefits is that this money, the Airbnbs help bring in the innkeeper's tax. So the CVB, we've got their red shirts on today. Winners wear red. That innkeeper's tax generates about $2.5 million for them, and half of that is short-term rentals. So that's money that goes towards. And I'm not going to put words in your mouth. What does that money go towards? Yeah, but what does that money go towards? Just kind of if you want to say 3 bullet points.
It's hard to kind of answer this at the same time, but those money funds come in and we work under a strategic plan centered around marketing to bring more visitors here and quality of life initiatives to try to make this a better place to live, work, and play. And then we have a budget that's put together. Great Lakes Grand Prix boat race gets a nice chunk of our budget, as does another big tournament, fourth basketball tournament. And then we again do it to marketing, quality of life initiatives, and then staffing to pull all that off.
Awesome.
So that's the elevator version of it right there.
Awesome. Yeah. So just like pulling a couple things out of that. The innkeeper's tax will pay for the boat races. That's an exciting event here in Michigan City that's a week long now, so that's going to be cool this year. And then other things that just improve the quality of life here in LaPorte County. One thing that was pointed out is that often these houses that are made into Airbnbs are the best houses on the block. So often people will buy I'm going to use the word dilapidated place and fix it up into something usable. And that helps turn the neighborhood around.
Or it doesn't.
Yeah, because there's also that goes off the market a lot too. Yeah,
Pick up their
so
leaves and they don't mow their lawn and
the
they
next
don't.
bullet point that we've got up here is that a lot of them are good owners who vet their renters. One of the things that we talked about, especially with that problem property that we got in Fogarty, was that one had an issue where a post prom was able to sneak through. I don't know if they accidentally approved it or if somebody snuck around the rules. But maybe 100 17-year-olds were just terrorizing the neighborhood. So that's one of the things we're trying not to do. But owners don't want their rentals to be torn apart by 100 17-year-olds either. So they're doing the most work they can to vet that, to make sure that they're not having post-proms, bachelorette parties, bachelor parties. One of the worst parties I saw on my block was a work retreat, and those guys were nuts.
17.
They're good for transient workers. Airbnbs are good for transient workers. They boast local businesses. One of the things I like to think about here in Michigan City is that we get a lot of really awesome restaurants that a town of 30,000 normally wouldn't have, because we've got that tourist population coming in. Local jobs and property investment. So those are the challenges and benefits. One of the things that we're going to hang close to tonight is looking at this parking lot, where we put some of the stuff about some of the ideas that were thrown out as solutions last month, excuse me. So we're going to revisit these and kind of go through one by one about how some of these can or cannot work. So first off, there was this idea that the innkeeper's tax might be able to go towards some law enforcement. One of the issues is that the Airbnbs often are running a business in a residential neighborhood, and that just doesn't hang up. My notes are gone. There they are. One of the solutions that we suggested is having someone to call, like a registration, which is worked into the 2021 ordinance, and we'll go through that a little bit. But I think the idea here is also going back to requiring someone to live within 20 miles, which we talked a little bit over about here, yada yada. Or including a 2-night minimum. That's one of the ways to get rid of having a post-prom or a bachelorette party. And another thing that Mark mentioned was limiting permits or having the fire marshal limit occupancy. The idea with that fire marshal comment is that when I looked at the problem property on Fogarty, they had about 20 beds in the attic, and that can't be safe. So that's just a thought to have. And as soon as we're thinking about it, there's no stopping to say that we don't need to save those lives. Yeah, in the back.
Yeah, I have a question about snow removal and about leaf removal. Who's responsible for that? Because many times, after the season's over, the Airbnb's properties aren't maintained.
That's an interesting comment. Let me put that in our parking lot.
And could you clarify what you said, how much of the tax for the tourism office that comes from the Airbnbs?
About
42, 43%.
about 2.5.
Right.
Over $1 million, I guess.
Throughout the entire
Exactly.
county, right, yeah.
Throughout the entire county.
Yeah,
That's
not
making it fall.
Yes, right.
Does anybody have anything else that they wanted to bring up from that last meeting that is top of mind with them while we're on that slide? Yeah.
Hi, Tracy Riley. I wasn't here at the last meeting, but our concern is specifically with a neighbor who has an underground pool, and that adds a layer of complexity to neighboring residents, because it exacerbates the already pervasive problem of strangers, different groups of strangers coming in every week, because every 2-3 days you get a turnaround of people who are rediscovering Disneyland for the first time, and all you hear night and day is Marco Polo, screaming kids. It just adds so to not have, and if you look at Beach Walk, there's all these rentals with one pool. and everybody goes to the beach. Well, we have 3 pools in our neighborhood, and it's mayhem.
One of the interesting things that we came up with last time too was the that problem property on Fogarty has like 3 or 4 hot tubs. I don't think they're playing Marco Polo in it.
Try a pool in a hot tub, yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And 6 garbage cans and 6.
20 cars.
Recyclable.
And they never take them away from the street?
Reach out to me when you, because I need to know an address for that. 'Cause there's a lot more important things there.
Yep.
Okay, so, yeah, one more.
Are there limitations to whether you're a full-time or a part-time resident that can rent it out as an Airbnb? Because I know some get the homestead exemptions that are renting it out and they're not there all the time.
The way that I understand it, and you guys might know more about it, but is that if you are renting out like your downstairs, you guys might know this too, is that if you're renting out your downstairs and it is your homestead, then you get that exemption. Brent is here. Never mind. Brent is the expert in this. Our township assessor can answer this. So correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, if you're living there and your attic or your first floor is an Airbnb, you still get a homestead exemption.
Yes, but you can only have one homestead exemption in the entire country.
Yep.
And your license has to have that address, your mail has to go there, your voting record, everything has to go to that address. But yes, they can do one floor at a time.
In 180
Awesome.
days.
So does that answer?
Well,
Yes.
it's not a duplex or anything like that. It's just a single-family home that gets the homestead exemption and they're renting it out. And you don't see them there.
That's
like
interesting.
Maybe a couple weekends, they're weekenders.
Brent's trying to answer that.
You can contact the auditor's office. They're the ones that you apply to, and they'll look into that and make sure that all that information is correct. But they will investigate them if you want to question.
I have one question.
Yeah, Jeffrey and then.
I wasn't here last time, but I wanted to suggest, in Stratford, Ontario, one of the things that they did when they didn't have enough housing, there were a lot of empty nester homes and seniors who needed money. And so they did a very simple kind of bed and breakfast. Maybe it was 1 bedroom, maybe it was 2. So it wasn't the whole house. It also addressed clientele that didn't have as much money to spend. It put money in their pocket, and Grandma loved making apple crumble for breakfast and visiting with the neighbors, and that was a whole thing that people would look forward to do that. And so I think as a way to help our seniors and to introduce socialization and giving them a way to help make money, we should look at a program that would help them develop that and bring that along.
Yeah. And then, thank you. Yeah, and that'll be the last one.
Okay, you talked about registering properties, but it's really difficult to find anything on the eMichigan City. So
We're gonna
that
get to
information would be very helpful and maybe perhaps make it a little bit easier for people to register them.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Jeffrey, I'm forgetting how I want to write this down.
Empty nesters.
All right. So yeah, we are going to keep moving ahead with our agenda, and the next thing we're going to do is the first of 3 things that we're going to work on our phone, just so I get some feedback from everybody in real time. So if you pull up your phone and take the QR code, that'll do the whole thing. But if you don't want to do that, you can go to menti.com and type in this number. So the first thing we're going to do with that is throw together a word cloud of some of the feelings we've got. Let's see what I've got. And then we're also going to get to rank some of the solutions so that we know what people are really buying. So we'll give everybody a couple more minutes, not a couple more minutes to get on there, but we'll just keep jabbering. So we've got a few council people, and then I saw Wendy walk in, and maybe another department head. But can I get the council people to wave your arms? Awesome sauce, because we're all around. Nancy, wave your arm. Thank you. Cool. And then Wendy's our department head here. I think that's the full list of people in the city administration. No, Marty walked in. No, he did not. Okay.
Marty's, no, he's in the
He is
back.
here. Wow, you're in the back. Okay. Cool. Hi, Marty. Okay, so has everybody who's trying to get in gotten in? Okay. One of the things I can pre-opt you for is that in the next slide, you're gonna have the option to write 3 words. If you hit enter after your first word, you're out, that's it, it's your only word. If you just hit the next button down and just finger, then you get all 3 words. But if you just wanna do the 1 word and hit enter, you're good.
143.
I think I've got 12, 13 people in.
And then this one is
Anybody else still trying to get in? Okay. Waiting for presenter, that's what we're looking for. Are we gonna get up to 20?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Waiting for presenter. I think everybody got a waiting for presenter. Okay, cool, we're gonna do it. We're gonna stay with 18. Okay, so what's your current mindset coming into this conversation? Just want to take a temperature check. I know that at the last meeting things could get a little hot, but it seems like people are a bit more optimistic and level-headed today. So just taking that temperature check and seeing what's on people's minds.
1 word or a couple?
1 or 2 words, yeah. Like, each line should have 1 or a couple words. And then the words will get bigger as more people say the same words. So sometimes when I'm trying to play the game, I just put the same word 3 times so that I'm like running the show. But that was because I use this app a lot. Curious, we've got insightful, someone's feeling anxious, I think that's a few of us. I like that solutions is getting bigger. Consensus on solution, I like that.
1 bad apple.
1 bad apple.
Awesome, so everybody's here, open mind, I like that that's coming up. Open-minded, open mind. No, 2 words, that's why it's showing up in 2 spots. Consensus on solution, that's exactly what we're looking for. Someone put my last name, that's cool. Thanks, Tommy. I'm feeling Coulter too. Awesome, yeah, interested, solutions, curious. I think we're all here with the right mindset. So, anybody want to say 1 or 2 things about why they're feeling the way they are? Otherwise, we can keep moving forward. I think we might be able. Yeah, you want to say something? Yeah.
Monica, I own North Star Properties, which is a vacation rental company. I wrote solutions because, first of all, Indiana law really infringes a lot of property rights for homeowners in this situation. Good rental managers, we don't want to do anything wrong. I'm a real estate broker too. I want your listing, So there's a good way to do it and a bad way to do it. And I think the problem, people aren't here. They're never going to come to the meeting, but there's a way we can work together to make it happen and do it well by everyone.
So one of the things that I love most about North Star and what they've got going on over there is that, like, I drive past a North Star property every day, and it says call Monica, and it's got her phone number on it. So if they're having a loud party, you know exactly who to call and who to shut that down. Just talking to the Airbnb, I'm getting ahead of myself, but talking to that Airbnb owner, that's going to solve a lot of problems. Talking to the cops is going to solve a lot of problems, but the Airbnb owner can tell them to get out. So if it is a host problem, that's an easy way to solve that problem. Somebody else raised their hand wanting to say a little bit about why they were feeling the way they are. Okay. So before I go on to the next slide, I want to go back to this for a second and just hit some of these so it's on our mind. We talked about the innkeeper's tax and law enforcement, business and residential. which is kind of a zoning thing, and we talked about that as one of the solutions, really tangentially. A 2-night minimum was something that we suggested could be a solution. Requiring owners to live within 20 miles is something we suggested could be a solution. And the reason I bring those up is a little disappointing, and it's because a lot of these things we can't do. Trammell, can I put you on the spot to say a bit about this?
Sure. You want me to come up there? My eyes are not as young as they used to be. So
Go up front, Trammell.
come on.
Go up front.
Yeah.
Hey, Greg. Greg, can you introduce Trammell? And he's the attorney for the city council. One of the attorneys for the city council.
As Councilman Presbellini said, that's accurate. My name's Trammell Ranks. I'm an attorney with Harris Law Firm. We represent the Michigan City Common Council. We've been working with Councilman Coulter on drafting a short-term rentals ordinance, looking at what other cities and towns in Indiana have done and what can still be done. And what came a lot out of the last meeting are certain expectations that unfortunately the council won't be able to meet because Indiana law provides the guide rails for what a city and town can and cannot do. For those of you who don't know, every city and town is a political subdivision of the state of Indiana. And the state of Indiana basically makes the rules for what cities and towns cannot do. If a city or town made an ordinance prior to 2017, then they can enforce their ordinance the way they choose. They can amend their ordinance the way they choose, and the state doesn't get involved. However, if a city or town did not do that, and many cities and towns didn't, just because this was not something that was on everybody's radar, this was not something that has grown to be what it has become, a lot of cities and towns did, and so they are bound by the terms of what the state says cities and towns cannot do. As you see on the slide, one of the suggestions was, well, make a minimum stay requirement. You can cut a lot of the bad out when you have people who can stay 3 days and they can't just rent for 1 night. Unfortunately, a city and town can't do that. Okay, that's interfering with a contract right of private parties. A city or town doesn't have the ability.
How does Long Beach and Beverly Shores
Yeah.
keep everyone under 30 days?
They had theirs before the year.
And that's unfortunately a problem that you're going to see a lot. You're going to say, well, they do it, why can't you? In the last meeting, there were people who were talking about, well, in right across the border in Michigan, this is what they do. That's a totally separate state with totally separate laws. But you have that expectation that if they do it, then you can do it too. The same thing with Beverly Shores, who had the ordinance in place before 2017. So a lot of the solutions that people are thinking about are just not actually viable based on the law itself. Can't rely, no, sorry. You can't require a short-term rental owner to live locally. Can't do that. Again, that interferes with the private contract right of parties. You can't say, well, okay, you have to have a number that you can call of somebody who's within the city limits who can respond in 10 minutes. That's simply not a power that the city possesses. Can't deny permits based on who the guests may be. Because, oh, well, we don't want any 18-year-old, like, you know, some hotels say we have to be 21 and up to rent, or some car rental places say, well, you have to be 30 and up to rent our cars, or 25 and up to rent our cars. Unfortunately, this is a governmental entity who doesn't have that right of contract. You have to respect all citizens. You can't say, well, high schoolers can't rent, because if I'm 18, I may still be in high school, but I have the ability to contract under Indiana law. So you can't deny that. If I want to have a prom party with a couple of my friends, there's not anything that you can necessarily say to do that, because we may all be law-abiding citizens doing this in a lawful way that you have no idea that we're there. Although that's, from what I'm hearing, the host problem was the big issue. You can't selectively approve and deny permits. You can't say, well, this street only gets 1 permit and this street gets 5 permits. Can't do that. And again, that's a suggestion that I heard come up in the last meeting. Well, limit permits in certain areas. Unfortunately, the cities can't do that. You can't directly relate the You can't directly regulate the business platforms. You can't say, well, Airbnb can only operate in these neighborhoods or can't operate in this zip code or anything like that. These are all suggestions that have come forward that they're just unfortunately not viable. Again, Indiana sets the guide rails. Yes.
Can the city classify these Airbnbs as home businesses that are operating in violation of the zoning?
Yeah.
So, two separate things there. When we talk about zoning, you have to be careful when you're thinking about zoning for tax purposes and zoning for planning purposes, because they're not the same thing. And a lot of folks will say, well, this is a commercial property, they're paying, X percent property taxes, so they can't be in a residential area. Well, it doesn't always. Zoning for planning and zoning for taxes are something different. But to answer your question, the simple answer is no. You can't regulate short-term rentals in any way different than you regulate regular residential property.
So they won't be able to classify them as businesses in a residential?
You can't regulate short-term rentals in a way different than you regulate residential properties.
So,
Yes.
Yeah, so then how does the city square the fact that you're putting in hordes of people in a single-family residence? With 20 rooms, 6 bathrooms, it's operating as a hotel.
I can't say that, that has happened. Maybe it has, maybe it has not.
Living next
That's
to it.
more of a policy question than a legal question.
Well, legal questions are wrapped up in policy questions. And my second question is, what is this law that you're saying is unchangeable, the state law? Can you tell me the title of that law that you're quoting?
I can't quote you the 4 digits off the top of my head, but I can sit in the back and look it up and provide.
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem.
I had a question. Okay,
Well,
there's
this gentleman right here is that.
I thought I was first, but go ahead.
I came as an interested citizen, and now I'm moving into a more active citizen. I wanted to share some things. First of all, we're talking about negative problems instead of positive solutions to a certain extent here, although you're running a really positive meeting. We, as the people who are running this, and I'm not running them, but I have, need to tell the city what we need. We don't need to have the city tell us what to do. So that's how it's supposed to work. And I'll use an example in Chicago. I'm a theater person. Many, many years ago, we had 15, 20 theaters in the neighborhoods. And we all got together and worked together. And we got rid of the rules. We went to the city and said, leave us alone. We know how to do what we're doing. You don't. And Sunday night there were Tony Awards. Chicago Theater got the Pulitzer Prize and the Best Play Award. Chicago Theater has 6 shows on Broadway. Chicago Theater won the Best Director and the Best Actress. Why? Because we all got together and figured out how to work as a team. And we market ourselves, and we're proud of it, and we're considered, in Chicago, the most successful theatrical community probably in the world. And that took about 20 years. Some of you who are old enough might remember the Oriental Theater. Remember when it sold shoes in the box office lobby? Well, there's 10 Broadway shows going on now in Chicago. So I love what you're doing, but I think we need to police our own. That's how it works.
That's our part of our.
People that don't
Okay, thanks, Jeffrey.
Okay.
So there was another legal question.
Well, just to cycle back around, that's Indiana Code, Title 36, Article 1, Chapter 24, subsections 1 through 20.
Can you repeat that, Title 36?
Sure. Title 36, Article 1,
Uh-huh.
Chapter 24, subsections 1 through 20.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, there's an Airbnb that is 2 homes, and it's averaging between, it says in the ad, they can sleep between 20 and 35 people. There has to be something legally and safety-wise that there's no way 25 or 30, you're gonna sleep 15, 20 people in each home. There's no way that can be safe. I was a fireman for 16 years. There's safety issues and that kind of stuff.
The fire code is something that we keep going back to as well, so I expect.
Because that's just, this is where we're having our problems. They got 7 or 8 garbage cans, they don't take them in from the street, it's a problem.
So that's a code violation, code ordinance.
I know, that's what I said.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
That's a code violence.
Yep.
Do the hands up have questions for the lawyer, or are we gonna move on?
Yeah, I think it's important to clarify this because I keep hearing about Long Beach has a different thing, Michiana Shores has a different thing. What everybody in this room needs to understand is they passed their ordinances before the state of Indiana passed this law. Okay, so basically their ordinances were grandfathered in because the state of Indiana couldn't tell them that they have to change what they're doing. Okay, I also think what's important for you to realize, this was brought up at the city council probably 3, 4, 5 years ago, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
There was an ordinance proposed that would have included a lot of these provisions, but this community was not ready for it. So it went down in flames by a vote of 6-3. So that's the other piece of information that I think you need to know, and I think it's important for you to know.
So we have one more comment.
I just remember during COVID, I thought that there was a restriction that all the houses in Michigan City could only sleep 20 people, and I thought that was the new ordinance. Is that ordinance not even an ordinance?
That does.
I never heard that.
Yeah, we can
yeah.
look into that. But.
Yeah, they sent it out.
I never could get 20 people in my house.
No, I mean like 20 for the rental, up to 20. You couldn't have like 30 or 40 or whatever you guys are like saying.
Well, they're advertising it.
Right,
So
but I
there's a
thought
whole
that
difference.
was like something that
Well,
was
HUD
brought up during COVID.
Doesn't HUD have you can only do 2 people, let's say you have a 2-bedroom, you could sleep 6 because they count the living room, HUD counts the living, I'm in real estate. HUD counts the living room as a sleeping area. So you have 2 bedrooms and a living room, so you can sleep 6. So I'm not sure what these people and it's advertising, I mean, I just looked it up. And for the 34 people, but that has to be, I would think that would be our minimum, would be HUD rules. And that those could be, I'm assuming, would be enforced for short-term rentals.
Yeah, so the problem with that, I do long-term property management as well. We have a lot of low-income housing.
Mhm.
So whatever law we put for short-term or regulation for short-term, we have to extend to long-term.
Yes.
There's a lot of people who have multiple children, where if we put those rules in place, it's gonna hurt families, local families. Some people have 6 children in a 2-bedroom house, 2 people. So some regulation like that would actually hurt
But
more
privately,
families in the area.
as an owner, I can say
I understand.
6 people is my
I
max.
don't people in small houses,
Right.
but, and I understand that.
So some of this is going to have to go to the actual property owners to
Regulation.
So
to regulate yourself.
Just because the cities can't regulate it doesn't mean that
You
the
need to
owners
regulate
can't
it.
make.
It's
my
because
own-
it's private, I can do,
Yeah.
They have to sign
as long as I'm
it.
not doing any.
And we have the right to remove them if there's
Correct.
more than 6 people.
Right.
So we're running about 5 minutes behind, and I like to keep to my schedule, but we'll find a spot for you to talk. I know it. Okay. So I just wanted to quickly move on to some of the things that we've already done, and the biggest one I wanted to touch was just kind of clarifying that 2021 ordinance. Some of the big things it does is it creates a registration for short-term rental properties, which allows the city to have a contact and a phone number and all that jazz for each property. That person could be 500 miles away, that person could be on the other side of the world, but that's how that goes. It imposes fines for non-compliance. Mr. Councilman Beatry helped me find the new ones that we came up with, because if you go into the old ordinance, we updated all those fees in the last year. So now it's $500 for each violation. Which, one thing I need to say, and I've got it as a nice bullet point, is that this has never been enforced. A big part of that is that the left hand really hasn't been talking to the right. The way I understand it is that when this was passed in 2021, Mayor Perry and his administration was in charge. So he would have been the person coming up with those systems. just to reiterate that he would have been the person coming up with those systems.
Are you saying that it's a $500 charge for non-compliant, like short-term rentals that aren't registered, or is this a case where they could call for the 6 garbage cans not being in, and they're not in compliance with code again?
I believe it's the 6 garbage can example.
It's a code.
Okay.
Violations of code.
Because that would, if I thought code enforcement was going to be here tonight, but if they,
Tomorrow was her last day. She's moving on to a new job. She's gonna have remember lunch won't drive 4 hours a day to get here?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Then you're really excited about it.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. It's Christmas. It's Christmas. Oh.
I know you're upset, right?
Oh no. Gotta send her a cake. Oh. I'm sorry.
Someone's opening
Low
up
energy
champagne
in this
tonight.
room, guys.
Oh, man.
She had the hardest job, man. Okay,
Oh,
so,
I know.
Because of you.
Correct.
Okay.
You're not wrong. That's true.
So, okay, I wanted to keep on with our agenda. I said that we get to the updates from the city enforcement plans around 7 minutes ago. So I'll just kind of be quick about these, and if anybody has anything to hop on about. We've got some of the solutions that we've been talking about. So we went through the solutions that we really can't do. We can't require owners to live nearby. We can't say that you can only have 4 people in your 2-bedroom house. We can't say, there's other things that I was thinking about, the minimum nights, all that jazz. But something we can do is come up with a hotline so that when you've got an issue with an Airbnb next door, you can call this hotline and report it straight to the city. This does not replace calling the police when you have a noise ordinance violation. So when the neighbor next door is throwing a rager and it's 2 a.m. and you're trying to sleep, you should call the police. You shouldn't wait till Monday to complain to the hotline. Do both, especially, yeah. Otherwise, the police don't know if there's a party until you tell them.
I'd love to add in, call the host. If you can
Thank you.
also contact, we want you to call the cops if that kind of thing is happening, but we also want to be involved and kick them out as well.
Yep.
So if you can do all of the above, call the police, call the host, and your hotline, you'll get farther.
A lot of times we don't have the number.
I know that.
Yeah, that's.
Thanks, Angie. Yeah, that's on our list of things.
I don't know you guys personally, but some of the hosts and people that own the homes are confrontational.
Sure.
They want to fight.
So annoying.
It's not a foolproof plan. I'm
But,
just
yeah.
take as many routes as you can to get to the solution that you need.
And one of the things I like about what Crystal's saying and what Monica's brought up earlier is that if you build those relationships with the property owner and they know who you are, they're going to be a little bit more considerate about your bedtime.
I've never seen that.
Angie's going to say something different.
I was just gonna say, the house is on Fogarty. I'm one of the main ones that contacts that, I don't know if it's the property manager, the owner, or who this person is. But many times I've texted, I've called, and still, I mean, although lately it's gotten better since we started doing this, getting together. I don't know if that's a coincidence, but you know, many times I messaged and it still was a problem, so.
Yeah, Chief, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just want to say, like, as sitting in both these meetings, there can be some more collaboration between the police department and code enforcement, I think, in helping resolve some of these issues. Last time I talked to Christine, I know it's her last day, but some talks we'll have with trying to get that registry put into our system so when my officer, when we respond to those loud music calls, that we'll know that that's a short-term rental. And what we can do is then have a log that we then give to them on Monday. Also and I'll put it out there for another extra duty that my officers probably won't like, but what we can also do, if we have those numbers, we can have a blanket response, and we can call those owners and say, hey, look, it's Michigan City Police Department, we got this complaint. It's just a blanket thing to send to them, let them know. Just a little extra we can do to make sure that, you know, people are being compliant, but though that the city is doing the most that we can to make sure that people are compliant. So we'll try to do more that we can do. It's been, again, my 25 years of being a police officer, we've never had to deal with this. I know it's something new, but I think there's some things that we can do between police and code enforcement to kind of bridge that gap to, I guess, enforce what we have and together. So we will get to, you know, making that partnership with code enforcement and make sure we can do the most we can to help, you know, with this issue.
To make a difference with
Wendy,
the
did
police
you want to add
calling
anything to that?
the host.
Well, I'm trying to listen, but
I think that, no, I agree with Chief. I think that, you know, even 10 years ago, we just didn't have these issues. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but it just never occurred to you that we would be here, you know? And yet here we are. The state does limit what we can do, but that doesn't mean things can't be done. It's more about the how and the what's appropriate. We definitely can look at the code, but code is the law, and that tells us what we can do. So if we want things to change, we need to update the ordinance, I think, to the best that we can and get the right legal counsel to tell you what is the art of the possible, maybe best practices other places. Because just reporting to planning won't change the ordinance. Do you see what I mean? So I'm just kind of listening, but there are things that can be done. But the bottom line is, no matter who lives next door, if there's a problem and you think you need to call the police, that is what you need to do. Because you could have neighbors that live there 24/7 and they're throwing a party. And you know what I mean? But it isn't the same. And so trying to listen and understand across the state, what are other communities doing? What's working? What doesn't work? And I think that, you know, after this and get your feedback, we can circle around and come together as a city and say, here's what we heard, here's what we think we can do. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, so I just want to read these out loud. I think we've been talking about them with the 2 comments from the city department heads, but creating a hotline, I mentioned that. Tying complaints to permit renewals and revocations, that's a big part of that 2021 ordinance, so just enforcing that. A GIS system to help track repeat problem properties. That's something that Mayor Angie's been talking about, a few different aspects throughout her administration. So that allows Chief Corley's guys to do what he just said. Better coordination between the police and code enforcement. Like I said, Mayor Perry was in charge of creating the system 5 years ago. And then I really want to keep pulling this one on you guys. Revise on residents to call the police, especially up in the first ward along Canada Park and Lakeshore Drive. It's easy for the police to be on their way somewhere and pass something in other parts of town. But the thing we kind of like about Canada Park and Lakeshore Drive is that if you're going there, if you're there, it's probably because you're going there. So it's a quieter part of town because of that. But it also means that you're not going to have the cops driving past on their way to do things. Am I saying that effectively?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then we talked about the fire safety inspections, because I don't think there should be attics full of 30 people. That just does not click with me.
Nope.
Yeah. A basement with 30 people sleeping, no thank you.
A clarifying question on the hotline versus calling the police. So if I'm interpreting this correctly, is that if you're calling in a noise complaint as it's ongoing, you call the police. But if it's a Monday morning, you've got trash or cans or whatever, you report that to the hotline. Is that correct, or?
It's a possibility, yeah. Because I mean, this system is coming together.
I
So
think
that's
they're
a
still in
good
the
question to
process
write
of
down.
Thank you. Because I don't know if Chief wants his folks responding
No,
to
you
trash
call
cans.
874-3221, I'm off.
So then, Jane, I wanted to get to you, but we're going to start with Councilman President Valinsky really quick.
Yeah, just one comment I want to make, and that was back, in 2021, I was on the council back then, and can't remember exactly which way I voted for the ordinance, but I do remember one important factor, and that's when Chief Dion Campbell was the police chief at that time. And one thing I asked the chief, because I was trying to get some background information on how many complaints were coming out of this part of town, that does this need to have an ordinance to orchestrate what's going on over there? So he got back to me, and going back a whole year, okay, he had one complaint, just one complaint. Now, I don't know how many complaints have come up, and I know that you said something at the last meeting, didn't you, Chief? Yeah, and it was just a handful of complaints, if I remember right.
Yeah, so it wasn't. So
my point being, if there's something going on, then call the police and let them know. To start logging calls, start logging complaints, and if now you can do something because you have a real issue, instead of going, hey, there was a party out there, a post-prom party, this thing is out of control. Well, I don't know. I don't live there. I live on Gardena Street, so that's like 2 miles away. But if you only get one call in 12 months, is that really a problem? I don't know. But go ahead, Marty.
Yeah,
I think you all get my point, though.
I had looked up for a whole 2024, and I want to say there were probably 12 type of complaints. The only thing is I had to look in 3 categories. Unfortunately, dispatch is not underneath my department, so they usually, depending on how you call it in, if it's loud music, loud noise, or disturbances. So out of those 3 categories, I think there was probably less than 12 in 2024. And when I say 12, that's like almost citywide. When you looked at the Sheridan Beach area, kind of where you guys are, Blaine, Long Beach, Beach Walk, all that, there was probably less than 5. And then just going from January of this year, and I think I brought those to May, either before the meeting or after that meeting, it was like 1 or 2. I will say May, in the stats, I kind of looked at those areas and we had a total of maybe 20 out of those 3 categories. But again, also not saying that I don't have the addresses for them. So when I was talking about getting those addresses into our system, then I can better track them with, address. So the more you all know, I know sometimes people like, I don't want to bother the police with those like small things or those things where we wait till it get out of control. Call us. We're gonna come and do the best we can at that time to do. A lot of times it's not take it on the rest, knock on the door, make the best possible, make the best approach to make sure that people are complying and stop.
Read the magazine.
And we'll go from there and we'll build our case. We'll leave it at that. It sounds like, we're at a point now where we're kind of fed up. You all are fed up with it. But unfortunately, what we need to do is start building that case to kind of make sure that, because it sounds like it's probably just a handful of just different properties. And if we use stats and so forth and build our case better, we have better opportunity to make them either get in compliance or not.
I think that absolutely a lot of it is just
Control them.
We did have an incident last year where I was frightened. There were probably 40 cars on my block, and there were probably 60 people next door. And I was fearful. And we called the police. And they did handle it.
We had a rave next to us and the police came in and shut it down.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, Jane, you were up next.
The one thing I did want to say is in the state statute, it does say that when they register, they have to have a contact number. And we know that there are LLCs and there are, firms and management, blah, nobody answers the phone. So I think when we do compose some sort of ordinance, there has to be a number where a person actually answers. And if they never answer, perhaps there can be a consequence for that. Because their feet have to be held to the fire the same as everyone else's. Or else they get the ordinance violations for the $500 in the mail or whatever. I don't know, but they're not gonna start partying that night. So.
I think the first thing is we have to make sure that people register, and we have to figure that out, because I'm a short-term rental owner and I did sign up for a permit or, applied for a permit, but now when I go back and look, I can't find it.
That's what I said.
To renew it.
Yep. That's not an easy system.
It's not an easy system you have on, it needs to be.
Hey, but I never did that for one.
Needs to be clear.
You got that?
So if you can't find a permit
I didn't get a permit.
online.
Cloud permit just isn't easy to navigate through. Like in general.
It's not very user friendly.
No, yeah, like
It's this new system.
Even,
even
and
for
he's
like
very tech
contract,
friendly.
yeah, like
Well, Senate
Took me
County
6
11,
hours.
1316 Ohio Street. My sister, she's gonna open up an Airbnb at the opposite end of my block. She had her daycare there. She closed their daycare last year and she relocated on the boulevard. She's gonna take the house where she had the daycare and it's gonna be magnificent. So your Airbnb thing is gonna be great. There is anything that's gonna be worse that's gonna happen there than what's happened in the past, believe me. So I look forward to her I miss her daycare being there. I kind of looked over it. So I'm gonna look forward to her Airbnb going in. She's a really great businesswoman.
Awesome. Is there another comment before we move on to the next agenda item?
So, I just have a question on that permit. Is it Cloud Permit that we go to register our short-term rental?
Yep.
Okay.
Wendy's venture,
I didn't hear the question.
do they go to the Cloud Permit to register?
The short-term rental?
Yes, it's in there now under licenses.
Okay, thank you.
It's new, because Cloud Permit is new.
Yeah, so because I couldn't find it before on anything on email.
Yeah, and if not, you can contact the planning department and we'll help you we'll work through it.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have a lot of
7 years
them,
old,
we definitely folks that
Cloud
comply,
Permit.
so.
It's terrible.
Michigan City's website, because I just went under their website.
Yes, if you go, or if you type in Cloud Permit Michigan City, it should pop up multiple ways, but we will have a new website soon. So it'll migrate, but yes, it's up there.
Yeah, that's the
and you should
website.
be able to
Yeah, I
find
know.
it.
Yeah, and then you just,
No,
yeah, you have to go like under registrations. Yeah, it's not simple, like it's not.
I know, I already registered my business. It was a nightmare.
An email list of about 60 people from Canada Park. And there's just a couple of major hiccups. The first one is that there's been a lot more than 5 phone calls made to the police. I think there are issues with who records them and how they get recorded. Then there's issues with who responds, if anyone responds. Then there's issues with how they respond. Then there's issues with code enforcement. I've never seen any code enforcement.
Describe which code enforcements you're not seeing.
Somebody making a whole lot of noise, 2 houses with teenagers in front at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, and then we've also talked about the garbage
The
ordinance.
police get called when they come out and they stop them, but they do it over and over and over again. So
It's a cat and
there
mouse
is no code enforcement.
And they start it up
Larry,
15 minutes after the police leave.
The other issue, is if we can't put some kind of occupancy limit. I understand people have a lot of kids, but those kids aren't driving cars. So when you got 20 people staying in a place, you got 15 cars.
Yep.
And our neighborhood can't support that. Those streets, you can only park, you can't, you got parking on one side of the street, 2 cars cannot pass. And if somebody parks on the other side of the street, then you've got a safety issue because emergency equipment cannot get up and down those flats. And that's every street in that neighborhood.
That's true.
So there has to be some way through occupancy or some way to regulate, they have to be required to provide parking on their
Property,
on their property.
Not on the street.
That ain't gonna happen.
Yeah. So how many houses are out there in Fogarty that are problems?
I know of 3,
3.
although one.
3 are big.
I'd say more like 5 that are big
Couple of
problems
them
on a
are
regular basis.
Airbnb.
And most of them are managed by the same management.
And so it's not systemic around the city. It seems like it's
No,
it's really bothering, that community,
We're
that
in
nature.
the
Sheridan Beach too.
Yeah.
neighborhood of.
I'm in Sheridan Beach and I have an Airbnb and I'm
It's the rental company that's managing it.
Why hasn't anyone reached out to this company and just?
Because they're even advertising way
I
overstayed.
just looked it up. It's,
Because the bad.
they're averaging 20 to 34 people in 2 homes.
I mean, I can help here.
Monica, what was your answer? 'Cause
How
I
many,
think
what's your
that-
maximum capacity?
What'd you say? 'Cause I think-
Yeah.
Oh,
I got her done 10, which is 240. And whatever you gotta do.
There be like a letter in the mail, like by a
We just
lawyer
gotta
saying
keep
they
calling
have to respond. So I'm in healthcare, and when somebody breaks a bone, you don't chemo the whole body systemically. You treat the site specifically.
Correct.
And I feel like everything here it's not systemic. I mean, it's helping the city.
Right.
I mean,
Except for
there's
bad
many,
apples.
many benefits, but it's this one problem child. And it's like, why don't, why?
It's not one problem.
How do we, if you're saying that it's
There's
this
4 in
rental-
our small community.
That rental company,
One
it's
slice.
underneath that umbrella.
Yeah, but it's by the same company.
Yeah,
2 of them.
and if
2 are bad.
somebody can reach out, or the city can reach out
And say, hey, this
and
is
try
gotta
to like
stop.
open up a communication saying, hey, this is how you're affecting our community. We need to set limits, I mean, out of respect for
There's
everybody.
no code enforcement.
But I mean, just like what he was talking about.
We gotta do something about the park.
So like I say, what you're saying is a little louder. Summarize it for the people is that there's a lot of good Airbnbs in this town. Most people are tracking to make sure that they're not going to have a post prom. At the last meeting, I shared this one guy gave me 7 examples, and I had one up there. One group of high school kids saying that they're National Honor Society. They're going to have the best time in this Airbnb. We're all laughing our butts off about it.
I have not seen her do a stellar job in her.
Yeah, so the goal of this meeting is to figure out when to not chemo the whole body, but to fix the one.
Not overreact.
Yeah, so when we've got those problem properties like the party house sleeps 50, that we have the tools to get rid of that without eliminating things like beach walk, $1 million of your guys' funding, adult races, when those houses look good, that's good property tax. That's nice stuff. So let's switch gears a little bit. The next question I've got, everybody should still be able to pull out their phone and already signed in. But the next thing we get to do is rank these a little bit, just so that I know where people's thoughts are. So the goal of this is just to put these in order, how you would say that they're important, just so that we know where to spend our energy. Because if we put 60 people in charge of creating this map and nobody cares about a map, then we're gonna not do that. So just the goal of this question is to see where people's thoughts are on these solutions. So we've got 39 people signed in. We're all thinking very carefully. If you need to go back to menti.com and put the code in at the top, that's how you do that. There we go. Okay, so let's start moving like crazy now.
Okay, menti.com.
I think there's gotta be something done with the parking. There's street parking. They put those condos all in and said there would be no street parking, and those streets are totally full.
Yeah. Right? Is that what you're thinking?
On South Lake Ave, they put those those duplexes in, made them put a parking in the back, but it said there would be no street parking. And there's all street parking in that road that goes back where the extension of Felton Street is. On the weekends, that is parked full both sides.
So Marty, Chief Corley, what do people do when they see parking violations like that?
Nothing.
Well, that's because when they submitted that thing, it was supposed to have 4 parking places per unit. We only put in 2. Of course, there was only supposed to be 7 units, and there was 8. I thought purely about that, but the same one had sides, so.
Don't those have like 6 bedrooms apiece? Those are the ones with 6 or 8 bedrooms and 2 parking spots?
So 3.
4 for, one's a 4-bedroom, one's a 3-bedroom, and they each have 2 parking spots. Do the math.
That's a design.
Who owns it? Who built them?
Some
Those are my cars.
He's a problem.
Mistakes can be costly.
We got 17 out of 41 responses, but we can kind of start seeing some trends. It's clear that people really want to see a better coordination between the police and code enforcement. That changed. That changed. The fire safety inspections is turning out to be a hot topic. That's a good plan. Hotline to reports to the short-term rentals directly to planning.
Well, the biggest thing about the fire safety is we don't want it to be too late and 5 or 6 people get killed.
Right. Yeah.
In our city.
We're unhappy with the neighborhood, but we don't want to see children or 17-year-olds
Because people don't realize how fast fire spreads.
Exactly, and
before they even know what's happening, they're in a fire.
From problem property to 20 dead kids. Yeah, I think all of us are on the same page that we don't want to see an addict.
We don't want to see that here in Michigan City.
John, your gears are turning.
Or any city.
No, they're not. Never mind. Okay.
No, I was just thinking about the fire, permit inspections or what have you. And I don't know, earlier, didn't we say that we didn't want to get involved with that because that might be too much of an issue? But I think it's not an issue. I mean, if you got a piece of property that you're going to rent out to 20 people on a weekend, there's somehow the fire department has to get involved and should be included in these discussions.
Especially if they advertise.
Crystal, do you want to add to that?
I mean, when everybody applies and registers their short-term rental, can't that just be a layer to it? Like, hey, have you passed
the red flag?
Yeah.
I think
It's
so.
the first time that they register. You don't have to do it every year. just
No,
the
you
first
have to
time.
re-register.
Yeah.
But the first time, now that address.
Oh, yeah.
Fire
Yeah,
inspection
not
is
to
the first year.
Yeah, and also they can say that they're only gonna sleep 6 and then start advertising that they sleep 26.
Yeah,
You know,
they
like,
always change their beds too.
Or the post prom finds out that they could get this 2-bedroom house. They're not sleeping anyways. Yeah.
Yeah,
The
I
woman
blame the
didn't.
parents on that one.
Well, but it's advertised that way. That's the big issue.
I'm Erin from Beach Walk. I just wanted to say we are required by city to do a fire inspection on all of our homes annually. So we have an engineering team that does do that. But we're doing a self-inspection. For us, I mean, we take that pretty seriously because obviously we had a fire in Beach Walk. We don't want anyone getting hurt or killed either. So that's, checking all the smoke detectors and testing everything and exits and all of those sorts of things. It is required by the city. I don't think that there's necessarily, I haven't seen an inspection then by a fire department afterwards, but there is something that is happening and it's required annually by the end of the year, so we are doing that.
Rentals aren't the problem. We'll stay on it.
Awesome. Yeah, I've been wanting to reach out to you about that because, I want to make sure.
They did a good job on
Yeah.
stopping that fire at one house. I have to say.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I started the foundation in there.
Sir.
When I was on the fire department.
If
And it
we're
was all
talking about
cedar.
parking issues
Now it's
there in
cement.
Canada,
We figured 3 houses.
can we implement, permit parking? And limit it to, however many stickers per house?
It's interesting to ask that question because, is it getting that bad? But I'll write that on the parking lot.
It's amazing how far people will walk not to pay $10 to park.
No, you're up to 20 now.
It's amazing how far
I think you
people
should
will
pay
walk
50.
and where they'll park not to pay $20.
How about just a tow?
That's what I think. Well, they park right underneath the sign that says no parking.
We've got 28 minutes left in our meeting, and
If you tow a couple and do a couple fines.
So some of the community-based volunteer solutions, these are some of the things that we listed on last time, or maybe they came up at the Sheridan Beach Homeowners Association meeting or in the meeting since then. But these are like the soft touch ways that we can just work with our property owners and build that relationship together. So it can be a little pie in the sky. I know that the house on Fogarty is a major problem. This is never going to work with them. But it works for some of these small ones that are right next door. It's just reaching out and building a relationship with that property owner. So that's the first thing you can do is just get that person's number, tell them that you're going to text them when there's an underage party going on. They don't want that either. So building those relationships is a big thing you can do. Something else that we've talked about is the possibility of property owners voluntarily agreeing to have a welcome letter or maybe even like a magnet on their fridge that just reminds a door hanger so that it's something that you see when you get there that's welcoming and warm, but reminds people that maybe imagine that it's your grandma sleeping next door. Because some people get on these vacations and they just, there's a Greek metaphor, but I'm not going to say it, but their mind is completely cleared and they're on vacation for 3 days. Vacation mode, that's what we say. They go on vacation mode. And they're just out to burn the world down. But a little letter or something inside the house, a magnet on the fridge reminds them that maybe it's your grandma next door. Maybe you're the third shift worker next door. So that's one idea that we've had. Clear guidelines for residents and how to report short-term rental problems. So I keep going back to that fridge magnet, but maybe some of these people, maybe we need to have the CVV or somebody, we've already talked about some of these examples, come up with a fridge magnet that just reminds residents that they can call the non-emergency number for a noise problem. It reminds them that we've got, let's say that the hotline goes through, that'll be a number that'll be on there. But something that just allows us a flyer that you keep in your drawer that just is a quick reference for what to do when you've got a problem with property.
Could you put signs on telephone poles? Like I remember neighborhood watch pole signs.
I've seen some cities, I think it was Kokomo, where they just had noise ordinance enforced on their telephone poles. Or
And then have a phone number to call. Because people that live in those neighborhoods may not know that they're able to just make a phone call. And then the people staying at those Airbnbs might be like, oh wow, they actually care about noise here. Probably not, but maybe.
Exactly. Something that reminds them that they're in a neighborhood with residents.
They probably will be back next year, but that's okay.
He wasn't here. He wasn't in our conversation earlier, but I did mention to you about hanging signs, especially down by the beach, that says, "Thank you. We're happy that you're here. However, please remember that you're in a residential neighborhood," and just kind of remind them on their walks to the beach that
Or the one signs that says no dogs on the beach and they take their 2 dogs
And
right
they go
on
right
past
by
the
there.
sign.
I'm not saying it's foolproof.
No. We've all seen it.
We can pretend we're building a utopia right
Yeah,
now.
that's right.
Fridge magnets, I've talked that to death. That mentioned quiet hour reminders. So one thing that's interesting about Michigan City, and I talked to the chief a bit this today, so I'm pretty sure I'm right about this, is that our noise ordinance doesn't specify a time that it goes into effect. So if you're a third shift worker and you're trying to sleep at noon, and you're permanent resident, long-term resident, neighbor, whatever, permanent, playing music too loud, you can ask them to stop, and you can get help with that. So yeah, our noise ordinance doesn't have hours on it. I'm super sure. So next up on our list was making it easier for contact information. So that's one idea for that is the map that we talked about. Maybe you have a space on your fridge magnet. I really like those fridge magnets, guys. And you can write
How many you got on your fridge?
information on there.
We have it in our welcome books that it is a neighborhood that we would appreciate them considering the neighborhood and not to have, we say there's no parties, we ask not to have parties, but there are still some times when things happen and then, we try to police our own, so.
Absolutely. The owners have so many incentives.
A few bad apples is gonna ruin the whole thing.
Aaron, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was just thinking on the contact list, could you have maybe a searchable database, like search by address on the Michigan City website, where you can just quickly find like 321 West Johnson is the property manager's beach walk, and this is the 800 number that I can call, maybe that would be.
I believe that's probably easier done through Beacon, from the neighbors, except for LLCs. There's ways to look up LLCs too, but Beacon is probably the best resource for that.
But I think that just shows the owner's data, not the manager.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
But if we're all
Fingers crossed you live across from the North Star. Call Monica on it, yeah. Yeah.
I've seen a community where they've required SDR owners to have their information or a contact information given to every house that neighbors that house around there, so that at least the neighbors have some place to go.
I think that might fall under the things that we're not allowed to require.
Yeah.
Correct. You missed that first slide.
Let's call it the beach walker, but property owner. So yeah, it would be nice, but yeah, and then it's also one of those things that the problem property.
But it's just the contact information, not that they're required to be there.
Exactly, but then.
The law prevents them from requiring owners to do that, but it could be a voluntary solution.
Yep.
Yeah, which again does not solve a problem property.
Right.
Yeah, we're trying to get the teeth in for the problem properties and to make sure that we're not doing chemo to the whole body but fixing just revenue. Yeah, Nancy.
I thought this was correct, so I verified it. Michigan City does have a quiet time between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Because I remember reading that in the past, so
Okay.
it's here.
I've been told to be quiet in the middle of the day before, and I listened to them, so.
See, we're trying to solve the problem properties.
Exactly, me when I was a teenager.
And then I think the last one is kind of something that I think Crystal and I were talking about, but just saying it a different way. It was coming up with those street signs that say you're in a neighborhood, please be quiet, or please be mindful of the residents around you.
I didn't see that on there.
And maybe we live in a world where the city does this, or maybe there's an interest in property owners or residents just coming up with their own signs for problem weekends.
Are we allowed to do that?
Like a little tiny plastic yard sign, you can put plastic yard signs out, I'm pretty sure.
On the telephone post?
Not on a telephone post, you don't need a telephone post. Yeah, I know that one. You've had a question for a minute. No, you don't, you just said repent.
No, I'm just
Okay.
listening.
Cool.
Pentagon.
Councilwoman Tillman.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify in regard to what Councilwoman Morgan just indicated, that 10 to 6 period of no noise. It needs to be more clarified in regards to that. It doesn't mean you don't hear anything. They're still allowed to play their music, but it has to be, shouldn't be able to hear 25 feet radius. so
They
many
have a-
decibels as
What is
well.
it, so many decibels,
So,
if you have a
keep that in
generator, it's too
mind.
loud.
Tennessee
Right.
doesn't
During the
mean
day.
no noise at all,
It's not.
but you should, as far as the decibel and the sound, 25 feet roughly.
25 feet, okay. Get that 100 foot out, quarter of the way, and see if we can start.
What, that pounding that?
Yeah.
At 6 o'clock in the morning?
So
What
if
are
you're
they doing at the-
interested in
by
contributing to
NIPSCO, Don?
some of those soft solutions, coming up with like door hanger or fridge magnet, that we could maybe work with or see maybe if somebody else in your property management.
Oh, that's sad.
To come up with a really
seawall.
solid,
Yeah, 6:30.
soft way to politely remind people that they're living in a neighborhood. And then one thing I want to talk to Aaron about is all winter long, people go to beach walk and then they run out to the shelf ice and just act like it's a playground.
Oh, God.
Can that be the top of the binder there?
I can hear
Just
it.
like, don't play on the shelf ice?
Yeah.
Okay, cool, now I can hear it.
To
It's like
downside
somebody's dropping
everything.
the weight
Yeah,
bars.
see?
It's like somebody's dropping the weight bars off.
I know, everybody wants to move out, move out. I see, I'm still on Gardena. Nice and
So,
quiet.
we've got 19 minutes left, I want to spend a couple minutes just breaking
Can't
things
hear that
out.
pounding?
But we can also start talking some of that general conversation.
No, I
I want to
can't
make
hear
sure
that
that whatever you
pounding
brought
down
here to
the
say,
let's go.
that you've had a chance to
I
say
bet you
it.
could if you listened.
So yeah, we've got a chance to rank these guys, but also I just want to start transitioning into the part of the night where we get everything out.
These ones are the voluntary?
These are the voluntary ones. So which one's my
Did you ever do the
problem?
lighthouse?
The code. 6 foot.
What would be some things on a guide for reporting problems that people would find helpful?
What is a problem with the
So like, that's a good question, because there's the noise, there's the garbage, there's
But there's also
parking.
like,
Parking.
you know, I've had people call to complain that like there's kids playing, you know, baseball loudly in the backyard. That's not a problem for me. So that's not something I'm gonna do anything about necessarily.
I know.
You know? So I guess how do we define a problem is,
Make sure you get back to that. I want to put that on the little thing that I've got, but I also want to keep this up for a minute. But Aaron, we just need to talk.
I know.
Jake.
Thousands of fun, we have hot tubs, so there was a lot of nudity. Nudity is really what I'm neighborhood. And I would say the other thing is language.
Yep.
Yeah.
Language that would make my mother curl in her grave.
Thanks, Jane. Yeah. So the guide has kind of stayed at the top. So that's a clear solution that we all need that a working group might want to tackle. Easier information to contact, so that's something that the planning department might be able to help with. Otherwise, just live next to one of Monica's properties and it's right out front. I love that solution.
Things
I wish we could do that with
happen,
everybody, but we
we try to
can't
do our
require it.
So what's this problem on Fulton
I said
Street?
things can
Is it
happen,
just
we
one
try to do our
house?
best.
These are the two. They.
I hope people contact me, I want you to embarrass that. No, absolutely, so I think that's a matter, just a matter of absolutely.
They average about 6 cars in each house every weekend so far.
And that was what teenage.
And they
I
got,
don't like.
They have a hot tub. They have.
they have 4 garbage cans totally full and 4 trash. Recycled
Let's switch over to that other screen.
Those big old houses are on.
And those ones on the corner.
But I think they called, they were called me, I just
Are they like brand new houses?
No, no.
we can move a lot quicker than the police can. Sorry.
I want to
Yeah, I
make
think
sure that some of
like
these
a couple
things
blocks
are
down.
highlighted.
Yeah, they're like from
So
Dune.
the parking, we've gone back and forth on the
2 or
lot.
3 blocks.
That's been a big thing that.
It's right on Holman.
Oh, me.
And
And they back up.
Fire code came up a lot today.
Okay.
the
I wanna make
garbage and
sure
parking's
that
on
that
Bland.
gets the attention it deserves.
I got it.
Don't look at all the red lines. Yeah, and does anybody have anything else to contribute? We've got about 15 more minutes before I shoo everybody out of here. Yeah.
We talked about problem management companies. Is there a way for the city to either permit them and then revoke those permits or whatever, or somehow control that?
That's the ordinance from 2021.
Okay.
So there's mechanisms in it where the property owner gets fees, and I believe after 3 strikes they're out, which means they have to figure out their business in a different way.
That's also what the state ordinance says.
Thanks, Jane. Yeah.
It's not hard, they got the signs right up in the front yard.
I'm just concerned about who's gonna be monitoring to make sure these owners are registering. Like, you know, how do we know that they are registering to have their information for somebody to contact them if we're gonna do some of these other things? Who's gonna keep track of that?
It should fall under code enforcement.
Yeah.
It's they're the ones that go and police who's not
Enforce codes.
following the code.
If you're putting a new saying to make sure.
Wendy,
How do
this
they
is your
know
wheelhouse.
this
I want
place
you
is a
to.
vacation rental?
Right, okay, right, so let's, you as a neighbor can
hold on.
call and report.
let me
Let
say
Wendy
something.
talk.
Let me say something about that, because anything is only as enforceable as the data that you have. So I want to be clear about that, code enforcement can only do what they're aware of, and everything that's a law is a code. So,
Right.
you know, there's only so many folks. But what I want to say is, when it came back to what Chief Corley said and what was on the list, we will have a GIS system that tracks all of this because it's already in place. And we're just building it so that we can tell by address or parcel what might be going on. So that's going to happen regardless. It just takes time. But to the chief's point, if you have an issue and you call in and they track it, then we'll know that something is going on. So it is if you see something, say something as appropriate.
How will they notify the code enforcement department? You gotta get that mechanism in place.
Well,
I think it could work.
And it depends on what the call-in says and who records it and how we get there. So it'll take some time, but these systems will begin to be helpful, but it'll take time, to work itself out. I
Yeah,
just wanted to be clear about
well, just a question, okay? Even going back to 2021 when this was initiated, that was always my question. Okay, we're gonna put an ordinance in the law, so code enforcement's gonna do it, but code enforcement's so tacked on with other things. And how does code enforcement know who in Michigan City owns an Airbnb or a short-term rental? They don't know. I mean, I could be owning an Airbnb and not tell anybody for 5 years.
It's very nice.
Well, I'm just saying, how, and you know what I mean, Wendy?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, it's a tough.
Yeah.
So you can't blame the city. I'm not blaming the city at all. No, but how do you get that word out? I don't know.
Well,
Yeah.
I think what Wendy is saying is that eventually, once you call
Keep
and
the
charge
conversation to one
to
conversation
a
at a
policeman,
time.
and then
Angie, you seem
they
to have
see that it's not registered, that should all
Knock on the door.
Have somebody who
We got a lot of
ideally.
conversations here.
Yeah, let's just have Larry talk right
You
now,
got two
guys.
separate things here, so you've got owners that
But there might be
obviously
other
they're
cities,
doing
Carmel,
things that,
Fishers. I'm sure they got systems in place.
But you also
I'll
have
find out.
the website. So all these private properties are managed by the same website.
The ones on Fogarty, yeah.
Right, so Airbnb would never allow you to put up that you can sleep 35 people in 2 nights. Never happened, but this company does. So is there a way, maybe we need to regulate the website, or
you can't.
Can't.
That's a great idea, but not in Indiana. Monica, did you want to set
You
that?
can call
the
Airbnb.
property management, the property management.
It's not Airbnb.
But I'm North Star and I advertise on Airbnb. So
They do too.
It's just like a Google for vacation.
Right, but this is a different company.
I understand.
Yeah, but they advertise on Airbnb too.
Yeah.
We just seen their advertisement.
For the same
Can
thing?
we let Monica talk,
Yep.
guys?
You can call Airbnb and voice a complaint. Airbnb can't and will disable listings.
Well, I know they
So.
Thanks, Monica. Yeah, that's helpful. So yeah, that's another tool that we can put in our back pocket. Is you can call the website and let them know that they're doing something slightly illegal.
It's
Yeah.
frustrating to get through to them,
Well,
but you can't call it.
It's still the property.
Well, VRBO just.
I mean, they have a website,
They don't have a number
property
anymore.
manager.
You have to do it.
She's calling the property manager, they're doing nothing, because you can't get a hold
You
of
guys deal
the
with
person who owns the property. They may not even know what. they may not even
40% of
know
people's
what-
bookings are from Airbnb.
whether it's a homeowner or at least 40%
I like that.
bookings.
I hate it.
Larry, did I get your comment written down in some way? It was mostly about, oh yeah, talking to Airbnb.
We're just talking about the property management company. These properties, all these properties, the proper ones on Fogarty anyway, are managed by
The same one.
the same company.
What about Better Business Bureau?
They don't care.
They don't care.
You know, something like that. Do work around.
The company doesn't care. They didn't.
But even if, so if it's an LCC, the owner is, you're never gonna get his number, so you keep calling, you know, the property manager, and they don't do anything.
You can research the division of corporations and find out who the manages part of the LLC.
Yeah, the state has that.
Phone number is there.
Yeah. It's like
It's just a process.
It's like inloclookup.com.
Yeah, Larry, that's a good idea. Let's move on to another. So, Can we give Jenna a minute to talk, guys?
So as the neighborhood transitions to increasing the number of Airbnbs or short-term rentals, so an example is, there was a listing that went up Friday. It was for a house that previously had been owned, you know, just by a couple that owned it, they passed away, their children are selling it. It's on Felton, it's a 2-bedroom, and it's being marketed for short-term rentals and sleeping 14 with plenty of parking. So is there anything that we can do in the city to get ahead of things like that so that they don't become, so that someone doesn't buy it thinking, I'm gonna shove 14 people in there every weekend?
Makes so much money.
Yeah.
Crystal, you go.
You could possibly call the realtor and say, hey, we want to change your marketing. We think somebody else might be better fit here. If they're going after money and they have that behind their marketing, the home is just going to be worth more. So they're hoping to bring the seller in more money by offering it up as a business. You could post it on your own social medias and say, you know, come be my neighbor, and maybe you get the buyer instead of the realtor.
Right.
Yeah.
I say this, I'm in real estate, and unfortunately, we have to have a code of ethics every 3 years, and it's a required course, but they just don't pay attention to it.
Right. Yeah, so yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, yeah.
Okay, so Michigan City does have a noise ordinance, following up on some comments made back here, and I just have a kind of a follow-up question for Chief Corley. Actually, I don't think it's for the chief. But we bought a recorder, a decibel recorder. So the ordinance I'm reading from it shall be unlawful to have a noise level in excess of 60 decibels at any point on the property line of any private property or from not closer than 15 feet in any public area located within a residential zone. And then it says that measurements shall be made by instruments and conducted in accordance with procedures outlined in the Code of Recommended Practices on file with the city clerk. We've tried to get our hands on that a couple times and we've gotten no response. And so then my follow-up question is, you know, how do we get that? And then to Chief Corley, if we call the police and show them our equipment that has been approved by the clerk, will you issue a citation that will go against the owner?
So we could use the instrument. The problem with it, if we go to the law, if we go into the court of law, how they gonna say, well, it's how that's why traditionally we use like the 2025 feet.
Right. So what I'm saying, if we call you and say that our decibels machine is measuring over 60 decibels, is that a citable violation? Will you write a citation? Will your department write a citation?
Again, we could do that, but again, who says if they?
Well, we go to court. I mean, we go to court over everything, but will you issue the citation?
It's officer discretion. It's gonna be officer discretion.
Yeah, and so when we called, they weren't real.
But if you call about loud music, we're not gonna go over and start citing stuff right away. We first make contact, try to get people in compliance. So.
Right. But the problem with that is that people are in and out in a couple days. So, do you mean like one night, or if
That's a good point.
If we call 3 times in a night, is that citable?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So my question is, will the police entertain looking at the decibel machinery if it's approved by the city?
We will look at it, but we're not gonna make a
What?
You
She
have-
was telling the people my name, and she went out and told them.
Okay. So this is one, so this, yeah, no, I understand. So this is, so it's pointless, the noise, what's written in the noise.
He's just trying to give a good answer.
But the orders gave you a measurement
Yeah.
level of also how far about hearing also. So that's what we use to measure, like 50 or 55, whichever one.
Right.
We use that to say, if I can hear it at a certain,
Eddie was the
if I can hear it clearly at that,
Jesus.
that distance, then that is what we would use. We're not gonna use decibel machine. I've never seen one. I've been doing this job for 25 years. I've cited people for that plenty of times as a young patrolman. But I've never used a decibel machine.
So we've got about 4.5 minutes, but I want to make sure that I got our first comment now.
Clear message.
Okay, now let's go to the guy in the green shirt again.
I want to go back to this gentleman here said, this is not a systemic problem. You know, you guys said we had like 500 plus places that have registered.
I think they came up with 365 is
Call
what
it
they
300,
tracked.
whatever you want to call it. We're all here because of a handful of properties by one company that manages that. So why don't we focus
We
on
should be able to
that?
do something.
And we're talking about, you know, the permits, you know, do we know if this one outfit has those permits registered with the city?
That's
Do we know what the number is to call for the property management people? And, you know, if we can't ask the city to circulate this or whatever, Eleanor, you have the email list, why don't we put that phone number out? And just make a concentrated effort on the actual problem, which is just one company and a handful of properties instead of going after all these other people and talking about what ifs.
Yeah, just one comment. So, you know, in the side discussions, I've heard Fogarty Street, 2 houses on Fogarty Street. Then I hear other people, I know, okay, let me finish. And then other people go, yeah, those 2 houses on Fogarty Street. So, has someone filed a complaint with the city to go and look at these houses on Fogarty Street, to talk to the owners of the houses on Fogarty Street? On a Friday or Saturday night, has somebody from maybe code enforcement rode around the neighborhood to see if there are violations going on? I mean, we're talking about 2 houses, right? 2 houses? 3 houses. We're talking about 3 houses. Has the city been involved in going over there and talking to these people? And if they haven't, I don't know if we have or not, but if we haven't, maybe that should be our first step, to talk to these people, talk to their company and say, we're getting complaints, we want it to stop. Are you registered? If not, you need to get registered. Otherwise, if we don't contact those people, everybody else is getting penalized for 3 bad apples in the whole neighborhood out there.
Yeah, I don't know if any of the department heads or anybody else wants to answer that, but one of the thoughts I have with it is that Chief Corley made it clear that we need to start building cases against some of these problem properties, and that means calling in a noise complaint, it means letting the city know when there's a trash violation, or we haven't talked about parking, but that's not applicable yet. But yeah, if we are calling in these noise complaints, the city doesn't know about it and the city can't force it. So step 1 is build a case.
Okay, I'll tell you what, I will get a hold of the code enforcement and inspection department and tell them about these houses and go over there and see what's going on. Okay?
Thanks, Councilman.
Yeah, I will do that.
So we've got about 30 seconds. Angie, I want to interview you. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I just want to say, when we do call the police, because I have called many times, about those 3 houses. One of them is the same owner for 2 of them. But are we supposed to ask for a certain person so that we can make sure that these are being logged? Or is it going, whoever answers the phone? I mean,
We should be able to pull the log of any problem house. Chief Corley, if we have the addresses, why can't, you should be able to.
So here's what happens though, a lot of times, so again, like, we've never been involved in this conversation. So when we go there, we're not going there because it's Airbnb digging that. And so that's why I said, it could be a better effort between ourselves and code enforcement, knowing these addresses that we have. So when we go there, not only are they involved, but we can make special attention to them so we can get them to the next level. Okay. Before it's never been bought this fashion. So now that we're here, I think now that we can start doing that. So I was about to look up some of those addresses.
Right.
Right now, just kind of see, we'll look at that and look at the past, and then going forward, seeing we can make measures. Like I was telling you, so like what I'm saying is like if we have a list, we can put that on our database. So when people are called there, also know this is short-term rental. So and then we can put measures in place that when they do get there, that somebody follows up on that on Monday, gets over to code enforcement, or at that time, say it's logged a certain way. So now we can, without having to go, step by step. So we have that, we can do that. So going forward, we can do a better job of, working better with code enforcement. Now that we know that that's an issue.
Well, let me say one thing. So if we have the addresses, go ahead and pull the historical data on it and send it, we can send it to the powers that be that are allowing them to post their properties. Because going forward, we can do a better job, but if they already have a history, let's just send the history. Get the list of, list of times that they've been called to those properties, and if it's significant, we can go ahead and send it now. I don't think there's a reason to wait so long.
Wait a minute, these houses are fairly new. This is the first year for them, so they probably won't be a history.
Okay.
And they're not.
This is their first year, maybe the end of last year, but this is their first year of these houses. Going on the
Second year?
I think somebody just bought them and they're going through a
They're
management
saying
company.
second year.
It's the second year,
They switched.
but there shouldn't have been right.
They
There
started
probably
out
isn't a
with
record.
management company and then they switched to.
But same owner, the same owner, right?
I don't know, they were for sale, I don't know.
Managed one of the beach walking, beach rentals, managed the one with the 2 decks about 3 years ago before it was sold. And when it was sold, it immediately started being managed by State Dog.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
then
it
they
was
bought the
just
one
sold in
next
the last
to
year or
it,
two.
and now it's the combination of the two.
I just want to remind people that it's not just the Fogarty properties. It's happening elsewhere, and it's going to become more and more problematic.
Yeah. So we're 3 minutes past this. I want to let Crystal say what she has to say.
Is it possible, I don't know if the state law supersedes this, but when a complaint is filed, is it possible for all these departments to work together and see, are they registered? Do they have any former complaints? Or here's your citation, and trigger that fire marshal inspection?
Yep.
So let me say a couple of things about the state law. The state law, they must have really good lobbyists, that's all.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. Yeah.
The citation, the problem is to go through the citation process with the court for $5 or $20, $40 or whatever it is, and then have to go through the prosecutor's office, and then whatever happens goes to the state offers. The city is not benefiting, and when I say benefiting, yes, we get the top tax dollars, but the effort that we're spending on these properties, maybe the tourism bureau can step in and help with some of the funding. They're making money off of it.
I'm paying 10%.
Exactly.
On every
My
rental, I
point
pay
is,
10%.
The city,
Bed tax.
the energy that's being exerted on this is not, one-time fee, no renewal fees, no this, no that, citations through the state. You write a citation that goes to the prosecutor's office. Who's gonna do that? Who's gonna push through for that?
Who does it now?
Exactly. Nobody. Exactly. That's my point.
So there's no department responsible
The
for
state,
it?
I think it's
I'm
7
saying
and
we
they're
can
getting
do
3
all
and a
that.
half.
It goes to the county prosecutor's office. Are they gonna spend the energy to prosecute a citation or to move forward a citation. And Travell, you may be Attorney Rags. I don't want to get into a full discussion. That's another discussion because but Attorney Rags, we know that state law is very
You're right.
very restrictive in what we can and cannot do. So, you know, we have to look for other ways around maybe, you know, how we set up zoning and if somebody's a business, I think the fire marshals should be, any other business, they have to go check it.
Yep.
So I'm just telling you, from my perspective as mayor, the energy, if there's a problem property, give those to us and let's figure those problem properties out.
Yep.
And not impact everybody else right now.
Yep.
But we, as far as, you know, what we can or cannot do, yeah, we can spend all this effort and time in doing it, but we're not, nothing at this point is meaty enough to stop someone.
You're right.
Unless there's a way to revoke it and make them start a process over and over again. And that's calling and reporting it, and maybe we come up with some email box just for Airbnbs to report stuff. I don't know what that is, but we need to decide what that is. And Brent, I'll talk to you afterwards and see what you have to say.
They just need to be right.
Mayor, can I say something from the
Yeah.
CDB? A role we think we can play in health, as best we can determine, having some conversations. We would like to convene the short-term rental owners because they really want to solve this problem. And they've had some great ideas, the few I've talked to. So, and so that we can come up with self-policing, which is where I think you were coming from, options, and then ways to maybe train other short-term rental owners that aren't doing things right, just to give them some guidance and some mentorship even. I've just heard of incredible ideas from just a few. So I want to encourage anybody that's here that owns a third-party rental and wants to be a part of coming up with a stewardship type program. We want to be a part of that. We'll lead it, we'll convene it. Please leave your name.
Okay.
I think maybe Crystal, do you have something with a code where they can give something?
Yeah, if anybody wants to just have a network of social, short-term rental owners and working directly with them, please come see me after.
Okay.
You know, and hearing these conversations have been so helpful to me. I'm sure Mayor, same for you. And I really appreciate the patience of the people that are not the owners, and but you seem to be reasonable and listening. And we want to try to help improve the quality of life as well as work on both sides of this issue. So I think that's the best we can do right now, and we'll continue to evaluate it as we move forward.
Yeah, so really quick, right before we get ready to leave, I wanted to ask this question when we started, but it's a little later now. And I think this room is different from that first room, but if these two workshops were the first city workshops you've ever been to, I'm interested to see. Okay, yeah, that's interesting, yeah. Thank you for joining Civic Life here in Michigan City. I hope you keep coming back. We have workshops all the time about different things. There's no way to predict when they're gonna be, except for following online. That was okay. I've been talking for 90 minutes. So yeah, thank you everybody that showed up. Thank you everybody who showed up for the first time. That's really important. I love when you guys, it takes a vulnerable bit to find your way downstairs. We're good. So I want to thank everybody for coming and reach out to
So
me
what do
with
you
any
want?
questions.
Our contact information if we have.